Dubai 2010. These men are no tourists. They're secret agents out to kill. They follow their clueless victim into the elevator. Shortly afterwards, the man is found dead in his room, murdered. The victim is Mahmoud al-Mabou, a leader of the Palestinian terror organization Hamas. Evidence points to Israel, to its secret service. The assassins managed to leave Dubai just in time. Are they Mossad? Yet there's no official proof for what seems obvious.
Looks like whoever planned it did a good enough job and took that into account. It excites the imagination, don't you think?
Surrounded by enemies, Israel has taken to spectacular clandestine operations since its earliest days, making Mossad renowned and feared the world over.
Mossad has been involved in every major incident in this region for the past 50 years.
The conspiracy outlook is very much deeply embedded within the Arab world. Time and again you see these aspects of glorification, demonization, using it for inner political purposes. I don't know if it will surprise you, but there are many people in the Arab world who seriously argue that Mossad was beyond 9/11.
The Israeli intelligence did not aim to create a myth. This was a byproduct of their strict policy of clandestine, secret espionage in operational work. Now, in time, they saw that it serves them very well.
Any action ascribed to Mossad serves the myth around the organization. It's said to employ a mere 3,000 people. Their exact number is a state secret. Yet the daring operations of Mossad have impressed and deterred Israel's enemies ever since.
When you have the horrors of the Holocaust and the current security challenges, which are perceived as existential, your mindset is left with one choice: rise and kill first. And the ones who are keeping you safe, risking their own lives, are the people from the Mossad and the rest of the Israeli intelligence.
Even prior to the foundation of the State of Israel, Jewish underground groups in Palestine make full use of the impact of precisely targeted secret operations. By assaults on the Arab majority and the British mandatory power, they aim at establishing a Jewish state in the Middle East. In 1947, the UN decides on the partition of Palestine.
The resolution for Palestine was adopted by 33 votes.
David Ben-Gurion becomes first Prime Minister and Secretary of Defense. On May 14, 1948, he proclaims the independence of Israel. The conflict in the Middle East escalates at once. That same night, Israel comes under attack. An alliance of 6 Arab states intends to crush the Jewish state in its infancy. However, the Israelis win the war and the young country survives. Ben-Gurion wants an early warning system against further attacks. This calls for effective intelligence services. They set up headquarters in Tel Aviv. It becomes the center of a worldwide network. Amman, Israel's military intelligence, comes first in terms of staff and budget. Its brief is to spy on the enemy's armies. The Inland Security Service, Shin Bet, is responsible for counter-espionage and anti-terror operations. The smallest yet best known of the three is Mossad. It's tasked with secret activities abroad with a view to protecting not only the citizens of Israel, but Jews throughout the world. It operates successfully behind the curtain, until a spectacular operation reveals its prowess to the world. Adolf Eichmann was one of the key organizers of the Holocaust. After the war, he manages to escape to Buenos Aires, where he lives a sheltered existence under a false identity. But then, the Israelis are tipped off about his whereabouts and send a Mossad team to Argentina. Operation Eichmann is underway. Mossad operative Rafi Eitan is in charge.
We were in a hideout close to his home.
Yet can Eitan be sure that the man who returns home from work each day by bus really is Adolf Eichmann?
I went up to him saying, "Momentito, senor," and double Nelsoned him to the ground. Then we pushed him into the car. Our first question was, "What's your name?" "Ricardo Clement," he replied. That was the name by which he lived in Argentina. A few seconds later, he said, "I've been expecting this moment day and night. I knew you Israelis would find me someday."
The agents have orders to put Eichmann on a secret flight to Israel. Prime Minister Ben-Gurion has grasped the immense implications of the case for the people of Israel. He wants the Nazi war criminal to be prosecuted at a trial that will stun the public.
Entering the bulletproof prisoner's box is the man charged with
Justice, not revenge. While the world looks on, it's a coup for Israel and for Mossad. Eichmann is sentenced to death.
One of the most stirring of modern times.
עומד בפניכם משמיד עם, אויב המין האנושי.
However, Mossad director Issa Harel could have gotten hold of Eichmann years before.
Issa Harel, though receiving information, didn't see the potential of looking and hunting and bringing to justice or killing Nazi war criminals. He had other things to deal with, and he didn't see it. Only afterwards did Issa Harel realize the magnitude of the publicity and the myth that such an operation can create.
By the abduction of Eichmann, Mossad has laid the foundations of its own myth. The message to Israel's enemies is clear. Our agents may strike anywhere.
It made us proud of ourselves. We, the Jews, had shown to the world. You tried to annihilate us, and now what? We are here. The Jewish people lives and exists.
Yet soon, Mossad spies must focus on other, more recent threats. In the summer of 1962, the regime in Egypt, Israel's arch-enemy, proudly presents its new missile program. Its president, Gamal Abdel Nasser, aims at uniting the Arab countries against the Jewish state. Nasser triumphantly announces that his rockets are capable of reaching Israel. It's a shock for Mossad.
The reaction may not have been outright panic, but it wasn't far from that. The Egyptian government and Nasser were boasting day in, day out, "We will chase the Jews back into the sea."
What's particularly sensitive, Nasser's missile program relies heavily on German experts who have been involved in the development of Hitler's V-2 rockets. In Egypt, their Nazi past doesn't speak against them. 17 years after the war, fears of another Holocaust still loom large in Israel. Mossad must take urgent action to stop Nasser's rocket program. Heinz Krug, a German lawyer and arms dealer, is part of the setup in Egypt. His brief is to take care of the logistics of the project. In the early 60s, he left Germany and settled in Cairo, bringing his family along, as have a good few old comrades from the Nazi era. Overall, 35 Germans are working for NASA's missile program.
This was in no way a hush-hush affair of some people secretly passing over to Egypt to build rockets there. Those involved spoke quite openly about it and were even proud of it. And nobody told us you're not allowed to mention what Dad's up to. Definitely not.
The German government too knows about the presence of its citizens in Cairo. And so does Mossad.
They had some knowledge about the missile project, but the truth was that all the different bits and pieces did not create an intelligence picture. And this is why they have done nothing, because they didn't realize that it happens. It was a huge intelligence fiasco.
Mossad soon finds out that NASA's missile program won't get far without the Germans' expertise. Key figures of the program are targeted with parcel bombs. They kill 5 Egyptian custom officials. A German secretary loses her eyesight. Yet the rocket program gathers momentum. However, Mossad then decides on a different approach. It's easier to conduct operations against the missile specialists in West Germany. Meanwhile, Heinz Krug and his family have returned to Munich.
They probably picked him out because he was in charge of the logistics. He organized the manpower, the material, and kept the whole thing running. He was the one who always tried to get them to work as a team. So he was practically the boss.
On the morning of September 23, 1962, Heinz Krug leaves the family flat for his office. It's the last time his daughter Beate will ever see her dad. Her mother later told her that he'd received threats. What had happened? According to a Mossad agent, the scheme ran as follows. He had lured Krug into a trap using the cover of an Egyptian businessman. Together with some fellow agents, he had overwhelmed Krug and abducted him to Israel, where, so the story goes, Krug had been subjected to extensive interrogation. At the same time, Mossad had tried to put the blame on the Egyptians.
There really wasn't any actual motive for the Egyptians, since my father got along quite well with them. So this Egyptian angle didn't make any sense at all, at least not for us. Later on, it became ever clearer that, like it or not, everything pointed to Israel, where they denied it, of course, in the beginning.
Beate Zoller and her brother look into it for themselves once they are old enough. They publish a book on their findings about the disappearance of their father. Officially, the case of Heinz Krug has never been solved. And it seems it was not only Mossad with a vested interest in keeping matters this way.
We were sitting at the dinner table when the bell rang. There were 2 gentlemen who, according to their service cards, were German Federal Intelligence men. They told us to refrain from digging up all sorts of things and to stop chasing phantoms, that I should rather keep a low profile.
Since then, several versions of Heinz Krug's disappearance have turned up. According to the latest research from Israel, Krug was finally killed by Mossad after a series of interrogations. Yet even the most drastic measures cannot stop the missile program. At Mossad, they decide to join hands with the devil, Otto Skorzeny. The former SS man is widely connected and has access to the most important figures of the rocket program. Skorzeny is one of the most prominent old Nazis still alive. Enjoying the protection of fascist dictator Francisco Franco, he leads the good life in Spain.
When I suggested recruiting Skorzeny to our head of operations, he said, "May a hair sprout from the palm of my hand if you manage to do it."
As you probably know, there have been some recent news stories that the people who kidnapped Eichmann are also looking for you.
They can come and I will receive them duly.
How do you mean duly?
Oh, how they deserve it.
Skorzeny poses self-assuredly to the camera. Yet when he's approached by Mossad, he's only too well aware of the capabilities of the service.
No ex-Nazi anywhere in the world could be sure of whether or not he was a target. The idea was to offer Skorzeny freedom from such fears. We said we wouldn't touch him. On the contrary, we'd protect him. It was a positive step that helped us reach every technician and every German official in Egypt.
Skorzeny accepts the deal. He delivers a detailed list of all firms and scientists engaged in the missile project. Skorzeny's contacts plus diplomatic pressure on the German government pay off. One after another, the German scientists leave Egypt. By 1965, NASA's missile program has come to a halt. It's an unsung success for a Jewish secret service made possible by a Nazi. Khrushchev in Egypt. In the mid-60s, the Soviets are arming their Cold War allies, those in the Middle East too. The MiG-21. The combat jet is considered reliable and potent. Apart from that, the West knows little about the Soviet fighter. NATO is eager for information so as to be ready just in case. The new jets in the hands of its Arab neighbors pose a serious threat to Israel. Mossad is called into action. Its agents are looking for an Arab defector. The idea? To abduct a MiG to Israel and have experts evaluate the plane. In Iraq, they come across a prospective candidate. Munir Redfer is a fighter pilot with the Iraqi Air Force. The Mossad agents figure that Redfer may be frustrated by being discriminated in Iraq because of his Christian faith.
I asked him, "Did you ever think of defecting with a plane? Your wife and children must, of course, be extracted before then." "But with what plane?" "Well, with one of your latest jets." "Pardon?" "Wherever I fly, they'll hang me, be it in Jordan or in Syria. Or they'll send me back and then they'll hang me here." I said, "There is a country. Trust me." "What about flying to Israel?" He was shocked. "Israel? They'll hang me right away."
Yet in the end, Redfer agrees, on one condition. First, his family must be smuggled out of Iraq to protect them from reprisals.
What the Mossad agents hadn't realized, the meaning of family is a bit different in Iraq than to us in the West. They thought, okay, wife and children. They hadn't reckoned with 32 people, nephews, nieces, cousins, and so on. They all had to be extracted by a secret operation.
By midsummer 1966, everything is settled. Redfer peels off during a training flight and steers his fully armed plane on a low-level run to Israel. The risky scheme proves an outstanding success. For the first time, a MiG-21 is in Western hands. Other secret services stand in line to partake in the results of Operation Diamond. After Operation Diamond, Mossad is finally established as a major player in the Western intelligence community. 12 months later, the benefits become even more obvious as a new war ignites the Middle East. Israel decides on a preemptive strike against Egypt, Jordan, and Syria to forestall an imminent attack by its Arab neighbors. During the Six-Day War, Israeli pilots make full use of the evaluation of Redfer's MiG. In less than a week, the Arab armies are beaten. A victory made possible not least by the intelligence from a Mossad spy in Damascus. In the early 60s, the Israelis managed to plant a top source in the Syrian capital. Eli Cohen, posing as a wealthy Arab businessman, infiltrates the highest circles of the regime in Damascus. For years, he provides Mossad with war-relevant data on the Syrian military. Until, in 1965, he's caught. Eli Cohen pays with his life, yet his reports were a major factor in helping Israel to win the Six-Day War.
The Six-Day War changed everything. It changed Israeli society, it changed the Arab world. That created or amplified the myth of Israeli intelligence, created or amplified the myth and the legend of the strength of Israel, but also projected on the Israeli sense of self-security.
Israel has enlarged its territory ever since the foundation of the Jewish state. After the Six-Day War, Israel controls 4 times as much land as in 1948, and to Israel, land equals protection. The young country has become a regional power. Yet the new dominance sharpens the conflict between Arabs and Jews. By now, Israel has also occupied the last Arab-controlled territories in former Palestine, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Here, tens of thousands of refugees have been sitting tight. Now, all their hopes of a return to their homeland are dashed. Mossad realizes the implicit dangers only belatedly.
No one in Israel had ever expected that the West Bank and the Gaza Strip would come under our control. So people just weren't expecting a large-scale terrorist problem.
Frustration in the refugee camps increases, foremost among young Palestinians. At Mossad, they're worried by their mounting radicalization. A new party becomes the rallying point for resistance fighters. Fatah's goal is to completely free Palestine. In other words, to wipe Israel off the map. More and more young Palestinians are joining the ranks of Fatah. Along with its political arm, the PLO, led by Yasser Arafat, they want to enforce the rights of their people in the Middle East.
Not the Mossad, nor the whole of the Israeli intelligence community viewed the Palestinian resistance or gathering or grouping as a challenge for a very long time. When Israel controlled the territories, of course, they had by far more possibilities because they could recruit people from the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and send them over to do terrorist operations. So that has become a threat.
The Palestinians respond to Israeli military power by terror. An altogether new challenge for Mossad. Arafat becomes its prime target, yet he evades every attempt on his life. And increasingly shifts his activities abroad, especially to Europe, where many Palestinians live in exile. They find allies among leftist circles. The PLO makes full use of Western liberal ways to set up networks and to recruit followers. Mossad is reluctant to strike in Europe. Abdallah al-Franji, later to become PLO resident in West Germany, back then leads the Palestinian student movement in Frankfurt.
The general feeling was actually in our favor. When the demonstrations started, we helped organize them. We handed out Palestinian scarves and passed on Palestinian slogans. And no matter where I held a speech, we were supported.
Europe also becomes the stage for radical actions by the PLO. Splinter groups carry out assaults with a view to drawing attention to the plight of the Palestinians. The Olympic Games in Munich, 1972. They're supposed to be serene games, presenting post-war Germany as a liberal and peaceful country. Security matters take a back seat until the morning of September the 5th.
Palestinian guerrillas infiltrated the Olympic Village early on Tuesday morning and shot and killed 2 members of the Israeli Olympic team. Bavaria's Interior Ministry have confirmed that the terrorists have taken at least 13 hostages.
Mossad is alarmed. There are hints pointing to a planned assault. However, they are vague.
We had just a general idea that something is going to happen. Okay, what can you do? You have to get the information accurate and in time. And in the Munich case, we had not. We have to admit it. If you don't have a good information, you are suffering of a tragedy. And Munich was a tragedy.
The Palestinians have taken 9 athletes as hostages. They demand the release of more than 200 of their comrades from Israeli prisons. Otherwise, the hostages will die. German security forces are hopelessly inept. There are no specially trained teams for an emergency like this. Other than in Israel, the demands of the terrorists are rejected by Prime Minister Golda Meir. Yet she offers to send help for a rescue attempt.
Prime Minister Golda Meir said to me, "Zvika, I beg you, go there, so we at least know what's happening." Before I flew there, the Germans unmistakably said that Israeli soldiers would not be permitted to free the athletes.
The Mossad director is forced to watch on helplessly. Ordinary policemen in plain clothes try to move into position for a rescue attempt, while TV cameras are running freely. The terrorists get a live view of every step the police takes. The operation is called off. Yet the hostage takers are getting nervous. They demand to be flown out. The crisis team pretends to comply with their demand. 2 helicopters take the Palestinians and their hostages to a nearby airbase. This is where the police intend to strike. Yet none of their officers are trained snipers.
I was lying beside a German sniper. They were using old rifles, without telescopic sights, without anything.
The rescue attempt fails. The terrorists open fire.
It broke my heart. The Palestinians threw a hand grenade into the helicopter and it burst into flames.
All the Israelis in the helicopter die. The hostages in the second helicopter are shot and killed by the terrorists. None of the athletes survives. 5 of the 8 terrorists die in the ensuing gunfight with the police. 27 years after the Holocaust, Jews are once again killed on German soil. Not even Mossad could protect them. A few weeks later, a Palestinian terror commando tries to enforce the release of the 3 surviving hostage takers from Munich. They hijack a Lufthansa jet. The German government releases the assassins. In the Arab world, they're celebrated as heroes. It's a slap in the face for Israel. It's obvious that the Jewish state can only rely on itself. Prime Minister Golda Meir is under pressure. It's election time and the country wants revenge. Golda Meir gives Mossad the go-ahead for a crusade against terror.
Munich Olympic Game terrorist operation changed the Israeli policy for many years, because after that, the Israeli cabinet allowed Mossad to kill Palestinian operatives in Europe, even though it was in blunt violation of any rule, of any law. But they came to the conclusion that if Israel doesn't do that job, nobody would. Rise and kill first.
A small team, codenamed Kidon, is activated. Its mission: secret liquidations abroad. The agents are sent after the masterminds of terror. Their operations will shape the image of Mossad for decades. The special unit is but the spearhead of an elaborate service. Mossad's inner structure is a state secret. However, there's talk of 8 departments. Caesarea is one of them, in charge of covert operations and assaults. Tevel is responsible for cooperation with Allied secret services. Keshet collects information through wiretapping, surveillance, and burglaries. The largest department is Tzomet. It collects information from human sources and maintains a global network of informants. The campaign against Palestinian terrorists begins in October 1972.
Of course, it was a revenge, to have to admit it. But it was to prevent terror against us. And to prevent terror, you have to take all the measures which are in your hands. And you have to do it in a very clever means, to do such a thing that they will not be able to ask you, what are you doing here?
The killings are intended as a visible warning. Leading PLO members react by seeking refuge in Arab countries. As a consequence, Mossad extends its death list by adding targets in Western Europe, where Israeli agents can move freely. Student leader Abdallah al-Franji is said to be in touch with the assassins from Munich.
Abdallah Franji, I remember him, the name. He was a student, and he was one of our targets.
Yet he's arrested by the German police, along with hundreds of other Arabs, and awaits expulsion, since after the massacre in Munich, the authorities have decided on a tough stance.
And the fact that he was in jail saved his life, if I may say so.
Al-Franji moves to Algeria to coordinate the PLO's European sections from a remote position. Yet Mossad is hot on his tail.
My friend, the PLO representative there, was holding a thick envelope. And I said, Abu Khalil, please don't open it. He said, "You're serious?" And then he opened it. I was thrown about 6 meters across the room. All his fingers were gone on both hands, and an eye too. I was really lucky I wasn't severely injured like my friends, and that I wasn't killed.
Within a year, Mossad kills 14 Palestinians. The Kidon assassinations are considered a success, until an operation in Lillehammer, Norway. In July 1973, there's a fatal mix-up. Israeli agents mistakenly kill a Moroccan waiter they took for Ali Hassan Salameh the alleged mastermind of the Munich attack. What's even worse, the agents are caught by the Norwegian police. All over Europe, communication channels and agents' hideouts are blown. A disaster for the Secret Service. The vendetta against the PLO comes to a preliminary end. The PLO leaders decide to focus their attacks on the occupied territories. Terrorist attacks in the West harm their image. But not everybody sticks to the directive. Assaults and hostage-taking in Europe continue, so Mossad is hot on its enemies' tails again.
We had to continue, and we continue. We do things that we did things that were published in the public, and we did things which are not public.
1987. Almost 2 decades have passed, during which Israel had proved unable to quell Palestinian violence. On the contrary, after 20 years of Israeli occupation, the fury about any lack of perspective boils over in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The so-called Intifada, the uprising of the people on the streets, catches Israel unawares. Operations against the PLO are still focused on foreign countries where its leaders are in hiding, a classic domain of Mossad. In Tunis, its agents and the Israeli military liquidate the alleged mastermind behind the uprisings, Arafat's second-in-command, Abu Jihad. However, it becomes ever more evident that it's not the PLO in faraway Tunis which calls the shots. Striking at them doesn't end the Intifada. In Israel, demands for a diplomatic solution are growing louder. In 1993, Israelis and Palestinians finally meet on neutral ground in Oslo to negotiate peace proposals, after decades of mutual killing. However, Israel's secret services are left out in the cold. It's the express decision of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin.
From my point of view, from Israel.
At Mossad, they feel snubbed. Its top brass only learn of the Oslo talks via their own channels of information.
The head of Mossad rushed over to Rabin and told him, "Sir, something's going on in Europe." Rabin's answer was, "Drop it, I'm aware of it," without sharing, without telling him what was going on. Peres used to say, "What do intelligence services know? What did they know about Munich? What did they know about Pearl Harbor?" Therefore, he thought he could do without their advice.
Rabin concludes an agreement with the Palestinians. The West Bank and the Gaza Strip are returned to Palestinian autonomy. In turn, the PLO agrees to stop the attacks on Israel. Yet the PLO is no longer the sole player when it comes to keeping the peace. A new radical force has gained in strength, the Islamic terror organization Hamas. Their goal, a theocracy and the destruction of Israel. Imprisoning its founder, Sheikh Ahmad Yassin, hasn't weakened Hamas. In Israel, the hopes for peace now rest on the deal with the PLO.
The main approach was that the Hamas is a problem, but as long as Yasser Arafat and the Palestinian Authority want to continue and see an interest in continuing the peace process, they'll take care of the Hamas.
A fatal error. Hamas's suicide attacks stun Israel's cities. The Islamists want to undermine the peace process. Mossad has no remedy for dealing with the new threat of fanatic suicide attackers. Israel's new Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, in office since 1996, is expected by his supporters to return to a policy of strength.
As Prime Minister, it's my responsibility to do everything in my power to fight this terrorist evil.
The Prime Minister asked the leaders of the intelligence services to name persons they could target and liquidate to stop Hamas attacks. But the leaders of Hamas were in Amman, Jordan, and we couldn't get near them.
As there is peace between Israel and Jordan, Mossad has largely retreated from the territory of its neighbor so as not to endanger the mutual relations. But Mossad is under pressure. It must produce results against Hamas and stop the suicide attacks, no matter how. In the summer of 1997, Mossad agents draw up a list of potential Hamas targets, among them its leaders in Jordan.
Benjamin Netanyahu compelled the Mossad to carry out an act in Jordan, and the Mossad didn't want to do it, and Netanyahu pressured the Mossad. Sometimes politicians need to show the public some results. And then the easiest outlet is the Mossad or the idea of the Israeli military.
Netanyahu wants to strike at the heart of Hamas. Khaled Mashal, Hamas's Politburo chief in Amman, becomes the first target. Nothing should suggest an Israeli strike. Jordan's government fears Palestinian uprisings in the refugee camps. The idea is to poison Mashal in broad daylight, but without anyone realizing it, so it will look like he died of natural causes.
The unit experimented on unsuspecting people on the street. Two people approach the target from behind. One sprays him, and the other, just before, shakes and opens a cola can, causing the can's contents to spray all over. When the person who was sprayed turns around, just sees a shaken-up can of cola, he thinks that's what sprayed him.
The team has little time to practice. Netanyahu wants quick results. The operation spirals out of control. The agents run into Mashal unexpectedly. He's in the company of his children and a bodyguard. Nevertheless, they proceed with their scheme. Their escape, however, fails. They're apprehended by Mashal's bodyguard. Mashal is in mortal agony. Two Mossad agents are exposed and end up in custody. Jordan's King Hussein is appalled.
من التأكيد على أنه هكذا أساليب لا يمكن أن تقبل.
Hussein said that if Mashal dies, he'll have a Palestinian uprising on his hands, and he'll have no choice but to execute our two operatives. So they decided to make a deal with Hussein. We'd save Mashal's life using the antidote, and the two captured agents would be released.
Grudgingly, Israel consents to save the terrorist's life. Nevertheless, diplomatic relations with Jordan are severely disrupted. Israel pays a high price for peace. Hamas founder Sheikh Racine is released from prison, a concession to Jordan intended to appease the Palestinians living there. Khaled Mashal becomes Hamas's new leader in waiting. The attacks in Israel continue. In September 2000, the Islamists unleashed the Second Intifada. The number of suicide bombers rises.
Mossad, Israeli military intelligence, and Shin Bet were suffering, I think, the lowest ebb of their history. They were not capable to deal with the threat.
The Amman fiasco plunges Mossad into its biggest crisis yet. However, there's a new threat that offers the opportunity to brush up the tarnished image. Iran. To its mullahs, Israel is Satan incarnate. That's why they are excluded from any peace initiatives.
They were basically saying, okay, if we're not going to be part of this process, don't expect us to support it, and don't be surprised if we undermine it. And that's basically what they did.
Iran sets up a network among Israel's enemies. It maintains close contact to Bashar Assad's regime in Syria. It supports the Shiite Hezbollah militia in Lebanon with arms, money, and fighters. Yet also the hostile Sunnite Islamists in the occupied territories receive aid from Tehran. In 2002, Meir Dagan becomes the new head of Mossad. To him, the main adversary is Iran.
Meir Dagan was characterized as a more robust director of the Mossad and was often seen as giving back teeth to the Mossad.
When Meir Dagan takes office, Mossad analysts estimate that Iran could possess nuclear weapons within a few years. A mortal danger. For decades, Israel has been fighting every nuclear ambition among its neighbors. Mossad is ordered to stop the Iranians' nuclear program. Cyber sabotage has opened up new possibilities to strike without contact and to achieve maximum damage at minimal risk. A computer virus cripples Iran's uranium enrichment plant, Stuxnet. Presumably as a result of covert collaboration between the CIA and Mossad. In addition to the digital possibilities, Mossad also uses an age-old method. 6 scientists working on Iran's nuclear program are liquidated. Israel buys time, and Mossad finally can boast another triumph. The program is delayed by years, a definite success for Mossad. There's progress in the war against terror too, yet it comes at a price. Israel immures itself. More than 700 kilometers of concrete and fences are raised to keep assassins out, and indeed, the number of assaults diminishes. At the same time, Mossad agents continue to liquidate high-ranking terrorists.
You don't kill unrelated people, you kill your adversaries, your enemies, because by killing them you're saving the lives of others. That's the rule.
A view that is highly controversial, even in Israel. No other Western country has ordered more extrajudicial killings since the end of World War II.
Intelligence organizations can be quite effective in combating terrorism, but the problem is that they don't solve the problem. The problem is political, economic, societal, cultural, education, and you have to deal with the sources of the problem. Otherwise, it will always be a war between intelligence organizations and terrorists.
It's a war Mossad can't win. Mossad has achieved mythical status by spectacular operations. There are new threats, however, which can't be countered by relying on past success.